In this video, I want to talk about the mysterious case of Amy Bradley, a cruise ship disappearance that still haunts years later. March 24th of 1998 is a date that will forever be etched into the memories of the Bradley family. It was that morning they decided to board the Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas cruise, and their 23-year-old daughter Amy vanished suddenly without a trace, leaving behind a chilling mystery that has still dumbfounded investigators and captivated the public over 27 years later. Amy was a vivacious college graduate, and she had just literally got her first apartment. She got her first dog. She was settling down in her life, becoming independent. She had a lot of things going for her. And she went on this Caribbean cruise with her family after her family, I think it was her father, won tickets through this raffle through his job. So he was able to go on this cruise with his wife, and they allowed him to bring his son and daughter along. The cruise ship had a club, so Amy's whole family was all down there drinking, dancing, having a good old time. But her mother and dad and brother eventually got tired, and they're like, okay, Amy, we're gonna go upstairs. So I think they said they went upstairs, I want to say like 2 or 3 in the morning. They went upstairs and they laid down, went to bed, and then Amy sat down there and she partied for a few more hours. She danced, and there was actually a company that got hired to take pictures of the club and people enjoying the club, and there's pictures of her dancing with a bass player, the band that plays on the ship, and she looked like she was enjoying herself. They looked back and they said that she had 9 beers in a span of 7 hours. Friends of Amy said that's kind of one thing that Amy liked to do. She liked to drink, and sometimes when she would drink a little too much. But it seems like her drinks were kind of like spread out, but 9 beers still is a lot, and that's how much they were able to track the cheap purchase. That's not counting how many drinks that people could have potentially purchased for her that night. And they were saying she was the life of the party that night at the club, and people were surrounding her, talking to her. So I'm sure people were buying her drinks. So I'm sure she was feeling good, but eventually she got tired and she went upstairs. She went in her room, and I guess the room was shared with her parents and her brother because they weren't able to get separate rooms. So she went out to the balcony and she had her cigarettes out there. She was smoking a cigarette. Her father, Ron, woke up at 5:30 a.m. and he was trying to look for Amy, and he looked out on the balcony and he saw her feet and saw that she was asleep on the balcony, so he went back to bed. He woke up not even 30 minutes later and he realized that Amy was no longer on the balcony, so he assumed maybe she went to go get coffee or something. The boat was en route from Aruba to Curacao, and it was about to dock at any minute. So the family was like, okay, this is a sense of urgency. We need to figure out where Amy is right now before the boat docks. So they're running all around the boat trying to figure out where she is, but they're really suspicious because they noticed that Amy left her shoes inside the cabin, and she also took off the yellow shirt that she was wearing that night and left it on a chair. So they're like, okay, we don't see Amy leaving the room willingly without her shoes. And after they looked for a few minutes, they couldn't find Amy, so they went to the directors of the boat and they said, look, we can't find our daughter. We need you to hold docking until we find our daughter because we don't want her to potentially get off the ship. So they said, look, we can't make no kind of announcement or stop the ship from docking because there's a lot of people who paid a lot of money for this cruise. We're not trying to disturb them, which I thought was super out of pocket, because if they would have sat there and just like held off docking the boat for an extra 15 minutes, yes, people would have been frustrated, but it could have made a world of a difference, or at least checked everybody before they left and made sure they announced who they were, and just made sure like nobody's taking like any unnecessary big bags that could potentially smuggle anybody out of. The immediate search of the massive cruise ship yielded no results, and despite pleas from her distraught family to halt the ship and conduct a thorough investigation before docking in Curacao, the vessel proceeded with its scheduled stops, allowing thousands of passengers to disembark. And this decision has long been a point of contention for the Bradley family, who believe crucial evidence may have been lost or removed. And get this, during all this, the cruise ship, they sent their cleaning staff into the room that Amy went missing from, and they cleaned the room, wiping away valuable evidence, which is just so frustrating. So I have a few theories on what could have happened here. She's last seen at 5:30 on the deck outside of their room, which I think she was never. Her cigarettes were never found, her lighter was never found, her camera was never found. So my first thought was, okay, she had been drinking, maybe she was out on the deck, maybe she came inside, took her shirt off, she was about to go to bed, and maybe like just from being on the cruise ship, you know, like the waves of the ocean and the drinking, maybe that got the best of her, and all of a sudden she felt nauseous. And since she was sharing a room with her parents and brother, maybe she didn't want to go throw up in the toilet and have everyone hear her. So maybe she's like, okay, let me go throw up on the deck. And she went out there and started throwing up, and then maybe she fell over in the process. But here's the thing, I think she was like almost 6 feet tall, and the railing was 4.5 feet tall. Like, you really have to be hanging over there to fall off, or you really have to try to go over the edge of that railing. But they also said they found the table against the railing, so it kind of looked like she stood up on the table. But the thing is, that could have been moved when they cleaned the room, and I really wish the police would have sat down and asked the people who cleaned the room, was the table there when you came in like that, or did you move the table? And I would have been very interested to know if they found like any vomit or puke particles on this side of the cruise ship. But that's something that the cleaning crew could have potentially cleaned up. That's all information that I think would have been valuable in this case. That was my first theory. She either got nauseous from drinking or from being at sea and decided to throw up and fell over, but I still kind of find that hard to believe. Or maybe she was like trying to lean over the railing to get a really good picture, because they're passing all sorts of fancy, nice buildings that would have been good for, you know, that photograph contest that she said she was participating in. But still, I'm like, okay, that just feels unlikely. And if she fell out, they're nearby, right here, they're at point C already, and you can see they're surrounded by so many different areas where she could have swam somewhere if she fell off the cruise ship. But again, I don't know how high up their room is. In some instances, falling off a cruise ship can be like falling and hitting concrete, because how fast your body's going and just how far you fall. And a lot of people think, oh, if you fall off a cruise ship, you'll be fine. You know, they just throw a little lifeboat and you'll be fine. But I actually looked up the statistics, and only 17 to 23% of people survive falling off a cruise ship. And they say if you fall off at night, then the likeliness is closer to 0. In the recent Netflix documentary, a lot of people were interviewed, and one woman that was interviewed claimed that she was at the top balcony of the ship just hanging out with her friend around 5:30, 6 in the morning, when they said they saw Amy and the bass player of the band get on this elevator, and this elevator was see-through. Like, it was a fancy elevator that had this glass, you can see right through it, and they saw Amy get in this elevator with this guy and go up to the top floor where the club was, and the club had already closed down, so that part of the ship was not supposed to be accessible to anybody outside of employees at that point. And they claim they saw Amy and him go up there, and they got out of the elevator, went into the club, and they claim they saw him give Amy a brown liquid, which they thought was likely coffee because she was tired, trying to wake up. This is a timeline and map shared by AmyBradley'sMissing.com. So at point A right here, that's when Rhapsody the Seas left Aruba at 1 a.m. and traveled 7 miles into Curacao. The ship waited off the coast of Curacao for clearance to dock. And prior to 5 a.m., the Rhapsody of the Seas was given permission to leave the ocean, and they enter the canal right here, where we see A, B, and C. That's the canal. And they sit there and they proceed toward the bunker wharf area where the ship was designated to dock at point B. And traveling through the canal is not a fast process. But Ron Bradley said he saw Amy on the balcony of the family suite between 5:15 and 5:30 a.m. And at point C, the Rhapsody of the Seas passed under the Queen Juliana Bridge. And at this point, Amy Bradley was probably on the top deck with her camera to photograph the colorful buildings along the canal. Witnesses have testified for a federal grand jury that Amy was seen on the upper deck with Alistair Douglas, which is Yellow, the bass player, between 5:30 and 5:45 a.m. And that's when they were on the upper deck and went into the elevator. And at point D, at the very end, the Rhapsody of the Seas entered the bay and turned 90 degrees to the right, and the cruise ship proceeded to the back into the specific dock assignment at the bunker wharf location. So by the time they got to the section E right here, the boat had docked and it was 6 a.m. and Amy had already been missing for at least a half hour. They had no success. The police checked out every angle, from Amy potentially unaliving herself to her being taken to her falling off, and they could not find any evidence. They asked for all the furniture and the suite that they were staying in to be forensically tested, and just to make sure they could find no evidence, and that didn't come up with any results. Yellow did a lie detector test, which came up inconclusive, and he gave his family a thumbs up sign afterwards. And the family pointed out that Amy was probably removed from Rhapsody of the Seas through the cargo doors in a container laundry cart. There is a service elevator from the upper deck where Amy was last seen to the cargo area. So they felt like they could have easily sneaked Amy in the cargo and off the boat and into the into the area of Curacao, and just kept Amy there for human trafficking. And years later, the mother suddenly got an email, and there's these pictures, and these pictures look exactly like Amy, but with longer hair and makeup. So the FBI actually did a comparison, and what they do is they measure facial features, like things that don't change over time, like the lengths of the ears and the cheeks and the jaw, and they sat there and measured every single point of Amy's face, and it passed 100%, was identical to the picture they were sent in the email. And this picture was from a prostitution site. It's like a website where they offer free sex, and if there's people visiting the island, they can also hire escorts through this site. Once I saw this segment on Dr. Phil where they're showing close-ups of the facial measurements and the side-by-sides, and everything was a direct match, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sold. This is what happened to Amy. She's currently over in Curacao or somewhere nearby being trafficked against her will. And I'm like, no, this is terrible. But I went and did a deep dive. I sat there and I spent plenty of time digging before I made this video. This is the picture they show in the Netflix series, and the picture that's been going around for the longest where they claim this is potentially Amy. Well, I went and I found the website that this picture's from. I found the ad promoting this person, and you know what? I think it's a big miss that the FBI wasn't able to find someone in Curacao to set up like a fake appointment with this person and figure out if this really is her. But the big thing about Amy is she has these tattoos, and she has the Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball on her left shoulder blade. And on the pictures on Netflix that they showed the ones where you can't see the side of her left shoulder blade. But I went and found the ad, and I found more pictures that show her left shoulder blade, and it does not have this Tasmanian devil tattoo. It's on her left shoulder blade, and that's exactly what's facing us here. And they conveniently didn't use this picture in the documentary or anything else. But there's no sign of either one of these tattoos. And the other tattoo that she has on her leg is not on this picture. And you can see her whole body where she's on all fours in this picture. But I had to crop it out to make this appropriate for YouTube. But yeah, she does not have the tattoos in this picture. So unless she got tattoo removal, I don't think this is the same person anymore. And I just have a hard time believing she got tattoo removal. I mean, it's a possibility. But after seeing the full body pictures in this ad that I found, I'm not convinced it's the same person. But yeah, they think that that could be a potential, that it could be her in these pictures. And I think she could be still being trafficked in another country. That's still very well a possibility. And here's the thing, they think it's weird because they have this Amy Bradley's Missing website, and they're able to get the data and see who's checking the website. And every single year on Christmas and like holidays, somebody is going to that website and spending an excessive amount of time. They're going on certain pages, like pages full of pictures of Amy and her family, and spending 30 minutes to an hour plus on just a single page. And like, it's so weird, every year on the holidays, like clockwork, this happens. So they either believe that's Amy and she's trying to see her family when she's missing them on holidays, and I think that could be an option. But again, if that was the option, then why hasn't she called her family? You know, yes, she could have maybe fallen in love with her captor, and maybe they've like brainwashed her, but I don't know, she still had a great family. And I have a hard time believing that she tried to go the rest of her whole life without making some kind of effort to contact them, unless she's like completely being controlled 24/7, which that could be a possibility. She's being trafficked, I don't know. And they say that somebody checks the website, so they think it's either Amy, or they think it could be someone like Yellow or somebody who is involved, and they're just trying to see like what's the latest in the case and how close they are to solving it. The family was so convinced that she was either being trafficked or she's still alive that they've made multiple trips out to Curacao, and they've even like went with the local police officer chief, and he drove them around to like all the local potential like human trafficking hotbeds and showed them like, okay, she might be here. And like the dad was like, oh, we went in this one place that kind of looked like where they store people, like trafficking people, and there's Tic Tacs. And we're like, oh my god, maybe Amy was here because she likes Tic Tacs. They're just trying to hold on to any sort of hope that Amy's still alive. And the brother said that they drove past this car late at night and they could have sworn that Amy's voice said Bradley. And he's like, I know when Amy says Bradley, it's real distinct, and she's got that southern twang to her voice. And so they turned around, they chased this car until the car pulled over and ended up just being an old man. And he is still fully convinced that that was Amy yelling for him, and even his family said they heard it. And I almost wonder, was that like the spirit of Amy? Like, was she dead, and was that the spirit of Amy calling out to him that night when they all heard her name? I don't know, but they didn't have any success when they went to the island. Everybody on the island knows to be on the lookout for Amy, but there have been other witnesses that have came forward. There was one taxi driver that came up to the family while they're visiting Curacao, and he's like, yeah, I saw your daughter. She came up to me. She asked to use a phone, or asked me where her phone was. I pointed in the direction, and she went towards the phone. But it's like, okay, she's using a phone. You think she would try to call the family. She never attempted to call the family. And then there is another guy that came forward, and he claimed that he was on the island. I don't think it was the island she went missing on. I want to say it was like right next to the island that she went missing on. And he said that he was diving, and this is an island that was like a more of a private, secluded spot where it was rare if you found more than 6 people there at a time. And he said he saw this woman all of a sudden walk up to him, and she was just looking at him, and he noticed that she had short brown hair and she had a Tasmanian devil tattoo, and she was about to say something to him when all of a sudden 2 men walked up and pretty much grabbed her and pretty much walked off arm in arm with her before she got a chance to really say or do anything. And it looked like these guys were like her bodyguards, or like she was their human trafficking victim, which would match up with the family's human trafficking suspicions. And then another guy claimed that he was in the military and he went to a brothel one night even though he wasn't supposed to. He said there was an armed guy outside of the brothel who let him in. He went inside, and Amy and another girl sat down with him, and Amy was being pretty quiet. They were sitting there having some drinks, and the other girl got up, and once the other girl was far enough, he claims that Amy was like, hey, my name's Amy Bradley. I'm from the United States. I'm being held against my will. I need your help. And he was like, oh my God. And the next thing you know, the girl walked back up and Amy got quiet. And the guy said after he left that bothered him so much, but he was in the military at the time. He was going to be retiring in 2 years. And if he came out and said anything, he could have risked losing his job. So he didn't say anything until years later. And that's the problem. Like, so many people claim they saw Amy, but they didn't say anything until years later when so much could have happened in that time. And another woman claimed that she was in Barbados, and she went to the bathroom, and she was in this bathroom using the bathroom, and she all of a sudden heard voices of men, and she's like, there's men in here. And she said she could hear one guy in the bathroom, another guy right outside of the bathroom, and then he heard Amy come in, and I guess Amy used the bathroom. She started washing her hands, and this lady said the other guy left the bathroom, and she started talking to Amy. She's like, what's your name? Where are you from? She said the girl was like, my name's Amy. I'm from West Virginia. But she said she was talking really low. And Amy's actually from Virginia. So she feels like maybe she misunderstood her because she was talking so low. And really, she said Virginia, not West Virginia. And the woman was like, yeah, that's cool. And she was talking pretty loud. And she said Amy suddenly pushed her against the wall and got in her face. And she's like, I'm sorry. And she all of a sudden, next thing you know, she saw these 2 men come in and grab Amy and say, come on, you gotta be here, you gotta be at the deal at 11, and you need to get to it, you're gonna be on time. And they grabbed Amy and left. And then the woman said she tried to leave the bathroom, and this man was pretty much blocking the bathroom, and she kept saying, excuse me, excuse me. And I don't know, the first time I watched it, I did believe this woman's story, but the second time I watched it, I don't know. The way she was retelling the story, I don't know. I kind of just had questions. The way she went and explained the conversation, it just kind of seemed when she was describing it, like she was like thinking as she was going, which kind of made me question it. Like, is this coming from your memory or is this coming from your imagination? But the family is taking it as a solid lead, and they believe that Amy's still out there. So much to the point that they still have all her belongings how they were before she left, and they still have her car. And they've even sat there and got her car waxed. They got her car all updated, and it's still sitting in the garage all nice and new, ready for Amy for when she comes back home. And her family, when they talk about her, they're like, yeah, we're waiting for Amy to come back home. They have full 100% hope that she is still out there. And even her own brother said, look, I still have hope she's still alive, and I kind of like it being that way, just having hope instead of, just giving up and accepting it. Oh, I forgot to mention one of the biggest revelations from this documentary. So, Yellow, the bass player that was last seen with Amy, that people were believing was involved with her disappearance, his daughter, his own daughter, reached out to the Bradley family and called and left a message and said, hey, I think it's time we sit down and have a talk because I have some information I think you need to know. So the Bradley family called her and she agreed to be in this documentary. She sat down and she said, okay, here's the thing. Well, first, let me explain something I forgot to mention. So the Bradley family, while they're on the ship, they got their pictures taken. And they got all dressed up in black, had their pictures taken, and they were able to purchase the pictures at the end of the night. Well, the family went to get their pictures, and they said that somebody had already went and picked their pictures up and purchased them. And they thought that was so freaking weird. Well, Yellow's daughter came out and said that her mom, once she was with Yellow when he was on this cruise and Amy went missing, and she claims after he came back from this cruise, her mom was pregnant, and he just like did a 180. All of a sudden he became really dark and mean. He was always angry and yelling and fighting all the time, which would make sense, like if he was involved with something that was really life altering, how that could cause a lot of anger that he has with himself that he's taking out on other people. And so the mom was like, I feel like something's up. So she decided to go through his belongings, and she found all sorts of photographs that he had in his suitcase of specifically white women on these cruise ships. So the daughter sat down for an interview and she's like, I just feel like something's weird. Anytime I asked him about it, he didn't really have like all the answers. There was always missing pieces. The story was always changing. I just feel like something's up. And she really believes in her heart that her dad had something to do with this. And if your daughter of all people is coming forward and saying this, your flesh and blood that knows you more than anyone else, then I definitely think that she might know what she's talking about here. So she sat down and called her dad. Her dad answered the phone, and she's like, Dad, I want to know what happened. And he, you can tell, he's a smooth talker. He's like, baby, you have nothing to worry about. I danced with her that night. That's it. Nothing else. I didn't see her after that. And she's like, well, what about the pictures? And he's like, you know, I worked on a cruise, so people wanted to take pictures with me all the time. They were on vacation. And he had an answer for everything. But even then, the daughter still is not fully believing what her dad has to say. And I just wish one day that this case would get solved and so we can have some answers. And so the Bradley family gets the answers they desperately seek. They helped fund part of this Netflix documentary. They had a GoFundMe and raised over $16,000 and took more money out of their own pocket to help fund this Netflix doc to help find Amy. Oh yeah, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. Sorry guys, I'm doing this video off the dome, no script or anything, so I know I'm all over the place. But they interviewed Amy's ex-girlfriend, and Amy had just come out to her family. Her family didn't sound very accepting of it because it was back in the 90s and they knew a lot of people wouldn't really open it with welcome arms. But Amy had came out. She had this girl that she was dating, but then she got drunk and kissed this other girl. So she wrote her girlfriend and said, hey baby, I'm sorry, I kissed someone else when I was drunk. Well, her girlfriend was like, I need time to think about this. I think we need to go on a break. And Amy was devastated, and Amy kept trying to get in contact with her, and she had no luck. So finally she sent her this message in a bottle. And at first Amy's ex was like, I'm not going to read this on camera, but eventually they were able to talk her into reading it, and the letter sounded almost like a unaliving letter. I can't say the S word because YouTube, but it sounded like a goodbye letter almost. It was very ominous. It was full of all these metaphors. To me, it kind of felt like a goodbye letter, like she was trying to get everything off her chest about how she felt about her ex before saying goodbye. Like, that's really how it felt. And then you learn that she just went through this big breakup just months before the cruise. She wasn't in a good place mentally, and you know, she wasn't being accepted by her parents for being gay. You know, she was really going through a lot at that time. So I was starting to buy into the idea that maybe she did try to unalive herself. But I don't know. I have a hard time believing that because she had plans with her ex to see her on Easter, and she even bought her a postcard and sent her a postcard while she was on vacation and told her that she had purchased her gifts while she was on vacation to give to her on Easter. And if you're going to take your life, then why are you buying gifts to give your friends when you get back, and you know, making plans and buying apartments and buying animals? It just didn't make much sense. It sounded like someone who was just starting their life, not ending it. I think she either fell off the cruise ship and she just hit so hard that it probably either broke some bones or even could have paralyzed her to the point she couldn't have swam, and then all of a sudden she drowned. Or I think that she did get kidnapped, and I think if they did kidnap her, I think they probably did drug her, like when he gave her coffee and the women mentioned they saw him give her, or they saw Yellow give Amy a brown liquid on the top of the deck on the boat. I bet he probably gave her coffee mixed with something else and probably got her all drugged up, and then next thing you know, he's sitting here stuffing her and stuff and trafficking her. Despite decades passing, the FBI still classifies Amy Bradley's case as open, and the Bradley family remains steadfast in their belief that Amy is alive. They've endured not only the agony of her disappearance, but also the heartbreak of being scanned by individuals falsely claiming to have information or the ability to bring Amy home. Like, they didn't even mention Frank Jones, the man who scammed the Bradley family in this documentary. In the fall of 1999, Amy Bradley's parents received an email from Jones, who claimed to be a former Green Beret in the Green Beret or Beret, I don't know how to say it, I suck at pronouncing stuff, and the U.S. Army, and he offered to form a team of ex-Army Rangers and Navy SEALs for a rescue mission. And he alleged that he had details of Amy being sighted in Curacao. So he hired Jones, or the family hired Jones, and they sent him over $210,000. And this money largely came from funds raised by National Missing Children's Organization. And Jones' entire story was a deception. He had never served in the special forces. He had no knowledge of Amy's location, and he even staged fake photographs of a man and woman on a beach, claiming they depicted Amy and an unknown captor. Jones was charged in February 2002 by federal prosecutors in Richmond for defrauding the Bradleys of $24,000 and the National Missing Children's Organization of $186,000. He pled guilty to mail fraud in April that year, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. So this whole mystery of Amy Bradley just serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities that can exist even in seemingly safe environments, and just it goes to show the dangers that come along with going out on a cruise ship, and when you do go missing at sea, and the enduring pain that comes along with the unsolved case. For her family, every passing year is a testament to their unwavering hope and a silent plea for answers to the question that has haunted them for nearly 3 decades. What happened to Amy Bradley? So if you have any information, then feel free to reach out or go to the website Amy Bradley is Missing. But that is pretty much it, guys. Let me know what you guys think happened to Amy Bradley. I would love to hear your theories in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.